Hey y'all, welcome back to Ramblin' Mama. I'm Lisa. If you're new here and you're into deep dives on true crime, please consider giving me a subscribe. I think you'll like what you see. Originally, I was gonna take a look at the Letecia Stauch timeline all the way up until the trial. And then this week, we got a verdict. So I figured I'd go ahead and cover the whole thing from start to finish. I feel like there have been so many things in the news recently involving children as victims. And so I just want to put a disclaimer out there that if that in any way affects you on a deep level, please don't watch this video. I had a few days this week where I had to unplug from true crime because it's so heavy, especially when it deals with children. And between Letecia Stauch and Lori Vallow, those trials happening at the same time, and I saw some crazy case about this predator, I forget what state it was in, who was found with dead bodies, and most of them were young women. I mean, girls, teenagers. So all of that to say that your mental health is the most important thing. And if this content is going to trigger you or stick with you in a particular way that is detrimental to your mental health, please click off. It's not worth it. Without any further ado, let's get into it.
I want to say that I recorded this timeline up until the start of the trial before we had gotten a verdict. So when I say in this next part that ChatGPT had predicted a verdict, it's because at the time of that particular section of the recording, we hadn't gotten a verdict yet. Okay, that's it.
I thought this would be interesting to show you. ChatGPT has, I forget what the cutoff is. It's something like as of September 2021, maybe. That's the cutoff of events that it can recall very well. But when I asked for this timeline, it already reported a guilty verdict for Letecia. It says August 2022. So also some time travel, I guess, would be necessary. Stauch is found guilty of first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, and several other charges. She faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. So, make of that what you will. I also asked ChatGPT if it could tell me what some similarities are between Letecia and Casey Anthony, and this is what it came up with. Both cases involve young children who went missing under suspicious circumstances, and both mothers were eventually charged with murder in the death of their children. Additionally, both cases garnered significant media attention, and both mothers initially claimed innocence and gave conflicting statements to authorities. In both cases, the mothers were also accused of attempting to cover up their children's deaths and dispose of their bodies. However, it's important to note that while there are similarities between the two cases, there are also significant differences. For example, the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Gannon and Kaylee are different, and the evidence and testimony presented in each trial are unique, blah, blah, blah. ChatGPT should have noted that these crimes ultimately occurred in Florida, or I guess more accurately put, the bodies were disposed of in Florida. And another way in which they're somewhat connected, I guess, is Letecia tried to claim to Al that Casey's former attorney who represented her wanted to represent Letecia as well, that he was courting her, I guess, for the privilege of being able to represent her, which is hilarious.
I'm not a bad person. I'm innocent. I agreed to even take a lie detector test for you.
Well, I mean, that's not for me. I'm not going to give you a lie detector test. Well, I mean,
it's not permissible in court because it's not. I said for you to believe me.
but who are you? Have you talked to them about this lie detector test, or you just told me about it?
No, I got recalled from big time attorney. I got Jose Baez law firm willing to come and meet me. That's how much they know it's screwed up. Do you know who the Bayos law firm is?
You know I don't pay attention to that shit.
Do you know who they represented?
No, tell me.
A lot of big time names. And they're and like People magazine, people are like pissed that they're not, that the way that things are going is not the direction of my kingdom. And so if you don't want to be on my team to be like against them fucking everything, then these people will put it out there.
And now getting on to the timeline. So I have to say, when I was constructing this timeline, it felt a bit like Alec Murdoch. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong again, but I'll say it the way I want to say it. It felt like Alex Murdaugh when I was constructing this timeline, meaning that it was extensive and felt more like a soap opera than real life. And I also had to edit it heavily just to make sure that this video is a somewhat reasonable length. In January 27th, 2020, 11-year-old Gannon is reported missing by his stepmother, Letecia Stauch. She told the El Paso County Sheriff's Office that Gannon left home sometime between 3:15 and 4 p.m. and he was walking to his friend's house in Colorado Springs. So the initial press release on his disappearance reported him simply as a juvenile runaway. Then the next day, on January 28th, Letecia drives her car to a short-term parking lot at the airport. She rents a Kia, and according to the affidavit, she uses the rental vehicle to pick up Gannon's father, Al, at the airport around 9 a.m. Letecia then returned to the short-term lot at 7 p.m. and allegedly moved Gannon's body then to an unknown area to hide it. Investigators believed that Gannon had been in the car because Letecia wanted to avoid her husband discovering his son's body, naturally.
So then Harley
Picks up her mother in her own car at 10:30 p.m. That's what investigators pieced together based on cell phone records. On January 29th, the rental car was returned at 9 a.m. by Letecia. And then Letecia met with investigators at the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. She arrives 2 hours late with her vehicle freshly washed. The affidavit said that Letecia arrived with sheets of paper, and she told investigators that she had been held at gunpoint by a man named Eduardo on the day when Gannon went missing. Letecia also alleged that a man took advantage of her, let's say, and then abducted Gannon. She said she cleaned up the area before reporting her stepson missing, and investigators seized Letecia's phone and applied for a warrant to take DNA samples from her. The affidavit said that Letecia began to stick tissues down her pants and said that she was having difficulty breathing and having heart problems, so she was rushed to the hospital. Letecia turned out to be completely fine, as I'm sure you all guessed, but then went on to slip out of the building undetected, which actually was totally fine because she was not under arrest. On January 30th, Gannon's disappearance was classified as a missing/endangered persons case. And this is significant because this means that the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children could now intervene in the search efforts. So authorities held a press conference and launched a search for Gannon. Letecia speaks out publicly for the first time in a pretty infamous interview that I'm sure a lot of you have seen.
I am Tisha Stauch, which is Gannon's stepmother.
You've been a part of the investigation since the very first time. You were the last person to see him. Is that right?
Correct.
What did you see when you last saw him?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about anything with the case. I would more so be willing to talk about how the community needs to have faith and continue to work together and not make these false accusations, like the things that have been said that I've disappeared from the community. I haven't been there to help, but there's lots of reasons behind that.
Reasons like death threats, right?
Right. Death threats are one of them. My family's getting lots of death threats. We counted over 20 some death threats already. Two, my husband's ex-wife is living in our home, and of course I'm not coming home to do these things and to help with the family when I was kind of like told I couldn't. And then many other things that happened with the El Paso County Police Department, you know, and in doing the investigation I was told I wasn't compliant. And could I elaborate on that?
Please do.
Yes. So I asked for an attorney during the interview, and I was denied that by them. I was held because they were blocking the door, and I was told I couldn't leave, and that if I would have touched them, they would have probably, you know, said I still wasn't complying, or said I was, you know, trying to run away or something. But during the interview, I asked several times, could I stop the interview? Could I get an attorney? Could I stop the interview? Could I get an attorney? I was denied. I was told I couldn't get nothing to drink. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, it was continuously that my constitutional rights were violated.
And that's why you say that they said then you weren't cooperating with the investigation.
That's why they said I wasn't cooperating at that time, correct.
And why did you ask for an attorney at the time?
Well, I asked for an attorney at the time because there was one individual, there was two really good detectives, and so I'm not, you know, going to talk bad about detectives, but the tactics they started to get when I would answer questions, they try to, you know, they're detectives, they're supposed to twist, the one main goal is to find Gannon. But during that time, some of those things made me feel uncomfortable the way they were saying things, so I immediately stopped and felt like an attorney would help me with some of the vocabulary and things like that I needed help with and understanding some of the things that they were asking.
I'm going to shift gears to what has become a huge online presence of people obviously trying to do the right thing, help find Gannon. But at the same time, sometimes it just feels like rumor mongering. Have you seen any of those comments yourself?
We have, and see, that's one of the main things we haven't been around in the public eye, because I didn't want to expose my family to it if all these things were going on. You know, there was comments about Gannon getting pushed off the hike, and there was comments about this, and that's just not true. I took care of Gannon for the last 2 years in our home because his mother didn't want to do it. And I would never, ever hurt this child. And I know there's some questions out there about, okay, so tell me what happens. That's up to the investigations when they end up letting you guys know, but I've cooperated with them, even to the point that we were held with a gun, and my daughter, a 17-year-old who serves our country in the United States Air Force, who has never committed a crime or done anything wrong in her life, was put in handcuffs over the keys that was in her purse so they could take her car.
And they weren't in there?
They weren't even in her car, in her purse.
And
they were in my pocket.
You originally didn't even know it was the law enforcement officers?
I didn't know it was a law enforcement officer because when he came out, I guess he was putting his jacket on, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. He was adjusting and happened to catch me. But I saw the gun and I panicked originally and kind of thought, oh gosh, I got who's this guy? And then once I realized it was the sheriff's office, I was totally okay, but they still had a gun and told me they were going to shoot me. But I was really concerned about my daughter, asking why she was being detained in handcuffs and things like that, when that shouldn't even happen for a child. That shouldn't happen for someone who was standing inside of a store shopping, because we couldn't have any clothes because all of our clothes were here. If we came here and got clothes, you know, we would be harassed. So she went to purchase some underwear and things like that and was put in the handcuffs in the store, you know, and then brought out with men with guns. And that's just not okay. You know, they could have approached me and said, hi, I'm with El Paso County. Can I please get this? Instead of the way that it happened.
I'm just going to check her chat. Doing great. I want to make sure that we're still got a recording, still can hear you okay. Okay, yeah, sounds like we're good. Every once in a while my mic will do that, and I want to make sure that's not going to happen here. Okay. Alright, and then, oh shoot, I flipped that around backwards. It almost feels like, to me, like kind of a pitchfork mentality with people. Do you feel safe in southern Colorado?
Yes, this is a wonderful neighborhood. We picked this neighborhood because it felt like such a great community, and the school district's great, and so I really feel safe in Colorado Springs.
But then the community seems to have turned. Is that true?
There's a lot of times that, you know, on the Ring Gap and things like that, we hear of like a burglary every day, and you know, some of those things you can't always look into and think that it actually happened. You have to kind of like wheedle it out. But overall, the community is really good at looking out for each other and coming together in times of need.
I should try and clarify here. Not necessarily crime rates, but the way that people are reacting online to rumors about you with the search.
Oh yes, wow. The rumors have gotten so bad. I pretty much have been told at least 10 different ways that these people have these conspiracy theories. I guess they watch a lot of law shows, and maybe they have all these theories on how Gannon is dead, and that's what they're saying. So I'm like, why are you saying Gannon is dead? He is not dead. We are going to find Gannon. And that's the main goal that we all have. My family has. Just because you haven't seen us, we have that same goal. And we've been out searching. My aunt has been out searching. My family has been out searching. We all have been doing that together so that we could protect each other.
How does it feel when not only you have a lost child who you are in care of, but then people blaming you for that child not being there?
You know, I'm just ready for Gannon to come home. Most importantly, for him to see his family. But second, I am going to be so ecstatic when I'm able to say to people that I hope they have a really sincere apology for all these theories that have came out online, for all the things they said that I have done or people have done. And I just want everyone to know that we're going to find Gannon. And I love him so much. I've helped taking care of him for so long.
Can you talk to me a little bit about him? I don't know him.
Gannon is so kind, and he loves to play video games. That's one of his favorite things. He loves Sonic and Mario, and you know, he's always helpful, and he was always so helpful with the dogs around the house, and we have 2 little cute dogs, and he was always like a person I could say, Gannon, can you go do this? And he would do it right away. You know, sometimes with kids we have to remind them and things like that, and that's okay, but he was so sweet and able to help anyone. He could notice when you're sick and say, are you okay? And such a kind heart.
I know you just said that you can't say anything about the investigation, so you can just say so again if you can't answer this, but is there anything we can hear about the hike? Was there a hike? That just seems like rumors right now.
You know what? Could we bring my daughter up here? Because she can go and say that, you know, she came home from work after the hike and she can verify that Gannon was at our home.
Okay, yeah, that's fine with me. If she doesn't want to, that's okay, but you're allowed
That's
to
fine.
ask her. Sound okay so far?
Yes. I need Harley. Because they want you to verify was Gannon at home after the hike. Because you didn't go to the hike, but you came home from work.
Do you want me to just say yes?
No, just answer the question. Yes, you came home from work and you can verify Gannon was at home. Yeah. I told her she didn't have to be too in-depth because she is still, you know, a child. But I want to make sure that someone knows that there's another person to verify that Gannon.
Sure.
Does she need to hold this?
No, that's as so long as she's close.
Close.
So just stay close. And yeah, actually shift a tiny bit that way. Just half inch that way.
Okay.
Perfect, okay. And then, can you say and spell your name for me real fast?
Harley Hunt, Harley Hunt, Hunt.
Perfect. And so just don't look away from her because the mic's not that way, so you don't have to like face down into it, but
Okay.
just don't look away. I was just asking about the hike.
Yes, so I came home later that evening. I was at work, and I can verify that he was there that night.
So there was a hike that you guys went on, but then you guys came home.
Yes.
Where'd you guys go hiking?
Garden of the Gods.
Oh, yes. Okay. I guess when
And then we ate Burger King afterwards, so, you know.
there you go.
Yeah.
And then it just was, I'm gonna go to play at a friend's house.
Can we step off of here? I don't want her on the...
No worries.
Okay.
Am I good?
Yeah.
You did great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, do it again.
And then it was just, I'm off to go to play at a friend's house.
Unfortunately, I'm not able to like comment on that anymore, and for that reason is because some things have been turned and twisted, and you know, that was one of those stories you were talking about where people say things. We had to hear things like who would let their child go out at dark and things like that, and that's just why I don't want to answer that. If I had to give, I'm not gonna say that part.
That's okay.
Never mind.
That's right.
I could take that out.
I understand that it gets tricky with
Yeah.
legal stuff. Do you feel like I asked you what I need to? Do you feel like this is going to help kind of turn the tide of what feels like a witch hunt, in my opinion?
I hope. Am I on camera now?
You are
okay,
still.
Okay. I think that a lot of people can see that I'm not missing and see that I am being cooperative, but to me, it's okay that they think those things because the way someone thinks about me, I don't have a problem with that. My main thing is I would never want someone to think that I would hurt Gannon or any of the children in our home, because that's just not the case. I've spent my whole entire life working so hard in education. There was even things online that was talking about my education license and I shouldn't even be a teacher, and they just didn't know that. Like, we moved on a military move and I didn't finish out my contract, so I gave up my license in that state. It had nothing to do with any criminal activity, you know, or any of those things. And it just got blown out of proportion on my professional status, you know. And
Do you feel like these are just internet detectives who think they know what they're doing?
It definitely is. And you know, here's the thing that kind of saddens me. It's like, if you're going to talk about someone like that and have a witch hunt out for them, why would you even care, like, about doing those things? Because this is a child. You're telling me that you're just as mean, you're just as hateful to talk about someone else like that. That's how I feel. Like, we just should not. We should all come together and wait until the end and see what happens, because Gannon's going to come home.
Any message for Gannon?
The message for Gannon I have is, Gannon, when you get here, you'll be able to truly tell what happened. And then I really hope I get a sincere apology from everyone who has made all those things, especially from my husband.
We just wanted to add a message to Gannon from my family, is that we love you and miss you, and we hope that you come home soon. And Gannon, I can't wait till you can come home and let everyone know that you're okay. We love you.
The sheriff's office asks anyone with information to call authorities, and they speak out against what they described as misinformation on social media about the case, but they didn't specify what misinformation they were referring to. On February 1st, 2020, Letecia and her daughter began their drive cross-country in a van that Letecia rented. Officials said that thousands of hours were put into search efforts, which included using aerial drone footage and rescue canines. A neighbor came forward by the name of Roderick Drayton, who said that he had surveillance footage that contradicts Letecia's version of events, and it appears that this is the first major crack that would go on to break the case. And I know you all remember that development in the Chris Watts case, how we saw it unfold before our eyes on the body cam footage. So in the footage, we see Stauch get into a red pickup truck Monday morning at 10:13 a.m. The footage also appears to show Gannon walking slowly as he approaches and gets into the truck. When Letecia returns in the truck at 2:19 p.m., Gannon is nowhere in sight. On February 4th, 2020, Letecia arrives in Florida and checks into a hotel just 3 miles away from where Gannon's body is later discovered by a group of construction workers. On February 5th, 2020, Gannon's biological mother and father make a gut-wrenching plea to anyone to come forward with information. And this video also includes Gannon's little sister, who says, "I love you, Bubba," at the end. And it's just absolutely heart-wrenching to watch.
How do I describe my G-Man, my Gannon? Gannon's my hero. I love him so much. He's not only my hero, he has multiple people that call him his hero as well. He has so many family members that just look up to him at such a small age. He's full of life. He's happy. He's energetic. He loves sports. He loves Sonic. He loves going outside, playing with his friends, his sister, his neighbor, especially Braden. This neighborhood basically gives you a true example of who my son is. Everybody coming together, all the smiles that people have. This is why I have hope, because I feel it. This is Gannon truly speaking to our community. Gannon he loves blue, he loves Sonic, he's into coding, he loves riding his bicycle with his sister, and I know that he's missing that right now. He holds his job as being Big Bubba very important, and for him not to be able to talk to his sisters has to be hurting him. This week has been awful. It's been more than a roller coaster ride. It's been more than emotional mess. I don't even have answers for my feelings other than I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I will never hear his voice, that I will never hear him run and say, "Mommy," that I'll never hear those corny jokes that he always tells every single day. He has to tell me a joke. He looks forward to telling me something silly. And I'm afraid that I may never see that again or hear it. I don't want to believe that, because that means that I'm giving up hope, and I'm not giving up hope because my son is full of hope. So I'm urging anyone that has any leads, credible leads, If you're too afraid because you know something, a kid just doesn't disappear and no one sees him. It's not how this works. So if you have anything that's credible, if you're afraid, don't worry about it. Imagine my son, how afraid he is. Imagine how afraid Gannon is. So please call, please write. If you need to have someone else to do it for you, please do. Because my son deserves to be here. He deserves to be here. Please call the El Paso Sheriff's County and let them know. And I thank you guys, the community, for what you've done. Because this is Gannon. This is who he is. And I thank you guys so much.
When Gannon was born, he weighed only 1 pound and 6 ounces, and even today he's still our miracle child. He still is, and he's such a happy child, and he just brings life to every party. His smile, even today, is keeping us going. His infectious smile brings me joy every time I think about it. The past 8 days have been, as Landon said, a roller coaster of emotions. Sometimes we jump in for joy because we get an information that we might think is a break in the case, and then the next minute we get we see something or get information that just breaks our heart into a million pieces again. But through all this, just know that your thoughts and your prayers and your messages, keep them coming, because even if we don't respond, we are receiving them, and that has given us strength to get through this. And I do want to say I'm so proud of Lena, my little baby girl here, and of Landon, my children's mother. They've been so strong through this, stronger than I would have ever thought that I could have ever been, and I'm getting strength from them as well. As I said, please keep sending your thoughts and your prayers, because we are receiving them. And if you have any information at all that could help, please reach out to the El Paso County Sheriff's Office with only credible information, but any information that you think may help. Thank you so much. Your turn, baby.
I love you, Baba.
Over the next few weeks, detectives would conduct more thorough searches of the Stauch house. Blue Star was used to find the presence of blood in Gannon's room. In the hallway leading to the utility room from the bedroom, the utility room itself, the staircase leading upstairs, the pathway to the garage, and the garage area itself. In Gannon's room, suspected blood is found seeping through the carpet, through the pad, and stained the concrete. Blood stain and blood spatter were located on the wall in this area. 50 droplets of suspected blood were found on walls near Gannon's bed. Gannon's mattress has a red stain on the carpet and blood cast on the wall. Experts say that the blood stains on the walls were likely created by a gunshot, a blunt force, or a stabbing. Suspected blood is found behind and around the edges of an electrical socket next to Gannon's bed. On Thursday, February 13th, 2020, investigators start monitoring phone calls between Letecia and Al. And if you all have listened to these phone calls, they are absolutely maddening. Her story continually changes, and so much of the conversation is Letecia trying to feel justified about something or other, and it has zero to do with locating Gannon. Letecia states that Gannon was burned with a candle to the point that his skin bubbled, and Gannon peeled the burns off and wiped the blood on his bedroom wall. Al made no mention of the blood on the wall. This was introduced by Letecia. On Friday, February 14th, 2020, Letecia comes up with 4 more stories on her phone call with Al, which gave me serious Casey Anthony flashbacks, but somehow even more cringe. The first story she came up with is she said that when the police came to the house on January 27th, the abductor was actually still in the house, and she tried to tell the deputies that somebody was there. But seeing as the deputies checked the entirety of the house and no additional person was located, This story was very easy to rule out as BS, or as Al likes to call it, spin. I like that. The second story was that Letecia was taken advantage of, if you know what I mean, by Quincy Brown at her home, and Brown abducted Gannon. She knew Brown's identity because she saw a paper with his ID when it fell out of his pocket. Letecia sent a photo of Quincy Brown to Al via text, I guess to corroborate this story. The third story was that Quincy followed her from Petco. At some point, he was laying in the middle of the road in front of her. When she stopped so as to not run him over, he jumped into the car and made her take him home, where he took advantage of her. The fourth story was that Letecia and Gannon were near the County Line Road and Highway 105 in North El Paso County on January 27th. And Gannon was riding his bike in that area and he fell, hit his head, and then they were abducted by Quincy Brown. Brown was driven by a man named Terrence. Letecia tells investigators that the searches in that area would be futile. The police believe that Stauch also fabricated this story after seeing Brown's picture in a lineup of Pikes Peak most wanted fugitives. On February 18th, 2020, Letecia calls a company called fakepolygraph.com, hoping to get the results of a test that she took sent to her. But she's told that her report was blocked by management based on the content of the questions. It turns out that even fakepolygraph.com is not going to help you get away with murder. Letecia was told by a fakepolygraph.com employee that with illegal activities, they reserve the right to not send the report. I can't even imagine what kind of legal issues they would confront if they were willing to do that. On February 21st, 2020, the search efforts for Gannon are suspended. And on February 28th, 2020, a judge signs off on the arrest warrant for Letecia. So with this next one, I had conflicting dates. I found March 2nd or March 3rd, but either way, Letecia was arrested in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and charged with first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, and several other charges. When she appeared in court, she waived extradition, which allowed them to expedite her trip back to Colorado to face trial. On March 4th, Letecia makes national headlines after she allegedly attacks a deputy while being extradited back to Colorado.
So what are we about to see in People's Exhibit 338, just to give some context?
The first clip is a view of Letecia along with Deputy James in the back seat of the van. They're sitting in captain's seats. And during that portion of the video, you can see Letecia moving around slightly, and that's because her hands are handcuffed to a belly band around her waist, and she is manipulating her hands out of the handcuffs, and she obtains a Monster Energy can, and she strikes Deputy James in the face with that full unopened can of Monster Energy drink, and then struggles with Deputy James. I myself have noted several pre-contact cues where she is glancing at Deputy James' waist area where her gun was kept. And then ultimately, whenever I come back to assist Deputy James once the vehicle is stopped, she also glances at my waist where my gun is kept. I took that to be a threat that she was attempting to obtain one of our weapons.
So let's have some context. Where did this occur in that travel from South Carolina to Colorado?
This is in Kansas on Interstate 70.
What approximate speed were you all traveling when this occurred?
About 75 miles an hour.
What was the reaction to this action by the defendant to who was driving?
Deputy Riley was.
What was his reaction to that happening in the backseat of the van?
We immediately start giving commands to Letecia to stop. And as we're doing that, Deputy Riley pulled over to the shoulder of the interstate. Thankfully, there was an area clear for us to pull over, and he slammed on the brakes, which put her into the back seat of my seat.
Was that a highly dangerous situation that was unfolding?
Absolutely, yes.
What made it highly dangerous?
Miss Stauch was already suspected of murder, and she assaulted a deputy who was armed and attempted to obtain her firearm.
What about the fact that you're on the highway and that action or reaction by Detective Riley had to occur? Did that also enhance the dangerousness of it?
Yes, he wasn't able to exit the vehicle to immediately help us because of traffic that was traveling so quickly next to us.
All right, let's go ahead and play that.
My t-shirt. Well, I asked for help for the air, and she's been nothing but mean to me the whole day. I can't breathe. Stop. I can't breathe. What? Just open it so I can breathe. That's all I'm asking for is to breathe. I'm just asking to breathe. That's it. Is to breathe. That's all I want to do is breathe.
2600 Avenue. We're right by Pretty Horses on 70.
I'm not resisting her. You're hurting my arm.
My phone is jacking up. Cold.
You're hurting my arm. You're hurting my arm.
Lisa,
I just
stop.
want my arm. It's hurting my arm. Just let my arm up. It's hurting my arm.
The more you press against me, the harder I'm going to press on the
I understand. It's not the pressure point. It's my arm. It's bent backwards and it's hurting. Can you just take
Yes,
pressure
ma'am.
off
This
my
is
arm?
Detective Bethel with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office.
Please, off my arm.
Need a marked unit
I am.
to the 2600 block of
It's pulling my.
Interstate 70.
Pulling my wrist, please.
I have Keisha Stauch in custody. She's just attempted to escape, and she's trying resisted.
I didn't try to
Hold
escape.
on. You just tried.
No, I didn't open the door to breathe.
Yes, ma'am. I'm on I-70 westbound in the 2600
Well, you
block.
were calm. We were not doing anything, correct?
Can you please put it with my wrist?
Let me speak first, okay?
Okay.
As soon as you tried to open that
Do
door.
you remember the last mile marker we hit?
The door so I could breathe. It's hot. I asked you to help me, but you just lean over and don't help. I said, hey, could you please find out how to turn the air on? Hey, the whole time you've been nothing but rude to me.
Keisha.
I'm just putting my arm down because it's hurting. I didn't try to escape or anything. I legit opened the door to breathe.
Detective Jessica Bethel with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. In extradition and Keisha Stauch.
Ow, my arm is hurting.
I am in a gray Chrysler minivan bearing Michigan plates. We have the hazards on and we're on the shoulder of the road.
Give your baby 2 times the DHA versus the other leading brand. However you do it, Enfamil fuels it.
That's possible.
Relax.
I can't.
Or the pressure will get
But
worse.
if it gets worse, then guess what? I have to go to a hospital because she hurts me.
What's your number, Jess?
On that, 650-719. Should just be able to look it up.
That's correct. We're at the 284.
284 westbound.
My wrist. It's hurting.
You guys have where are you going? Colorado? Oh Lord, you got a west. Yeah. And we have a what? You have a better belly belt than this? It's because you're better. I don't have it, friend. I don't. Here, let's do this. Let's go out here in the ditch.
Let's get her down on her knee.
On March 5th, 2020, Al files for divorce from Letecia. He says that the marriage is irretrievably broken in his filing. On March 11th, Letecia is officially charged with first-degree murder in an El Paso County courtroom. On March 17th, after an extensive search effort, Gannon's remains were found by some construction workers in a suitcase near a bridge in a remote area of Pace, Florida. Bridge inspectors with the Florida Department of Transportation found the suitcase under the bridge and, upon opening it, found what appeared to be a boy's body wrapped in blankets, according to Sergeant Yoder. The sergeant also said that Gannon had been shot in the jaw, stabbed in the chest and the back, and he suffered a skull fracture. It appeared that Gannon also had defensive wounds covering his arms and legs, and a bullet that was lodged in his skull. On June 4th, 2020, in another one of Letecia's capers, she got caught trying to escape jail. She detailed her plans in letters to a fellow inmate at El Paso County Jail, which included measuring herself to see if she would fit through the window and somehow obtaining a broom so she could break the glass. On January 19th, 2021, a mental health evaluation was submitted to the court stating that Letecia is competent to stand trial. On February 26th, the judge granted Letecia's motion to represent herself in court. And you know what they say about self-representation, right? The person who represents themselves has a fool for an attorney. In March of 2021, Letecia's trial is further delayed after her defense team requests more time to prepare. In April, Letecia and Al's divorce is finalized. In May, Letecia says that she will no longer be representing herself and she is appointed a new public defender. In February 2023, Letecia changes her plea from not guilty to not guilty by reason of insanity. The case was then delayed so that Letecia could be evaluated some more at the state hospital. On April 3rd, 2023, opening statements in Letecia's trial began. On April 4th, the first witness to appear for the prosecution was Gannon's father, Al Stauch. Now, I know that there have been a lot of criticisms aimed at Al for leaving his children with such an untrustworthy person, among other things. The accusations get worse than that. But when you hear the phone calls that were made between him and Letecia during the search for Gannon, he was cooperating with the FBI at the time. It's so clear that he's absolutely relentless in the search for Gannon and trying to do whatever he can to get this insanely manipulative person to give him any information whatsoever that could help in the search. On April 5th, when asked about his ex-wife's sanity, he said, quote, "I believe she is and was absolutely sane." He said, "From the time I met her to even today." On April 7th, Nicole Mobley, who was Letecia's neighbor, testified that Letecia tried to bribe Nicole to lie to law enforcement to say that she had seen someone take Gannon. On April 11th, Dakota Lowry, who is Letecia's half-brother, testified against his sister. He claimed that he saw Letecia put the suitcase that Gannon's body was later found in into her van on February 1st, 2020. He said that, quote, "Something didn't feel right about the suitcase," which is a really good time to remind y'all that your instincts are there for a reason. And whether it's something as serious as this or more likely less serious, listen to your gut. On April 17th, Harley, Letecia's daughter, testified against her mother, and poor Harley has received so much hatred on the internet. In her testimony, she said that she had no idea that her mother killed Gannon. We also heard that Harley had a long history of being lied to and manipulated by her mother, which, surprise, surprise, including lies about the death of her biological father. Letecia had told Harley that he was robbed and shot, when in actuality, her father died of an overdose. And Harley found out the truth about her father's death from the internet. On April 21st, FBI agent Jonathan Grusing testified about Letecia's web searches, including when she Googled, quote, "I don't like my stepson," and, quote, "blood spurting from arterial bleed." On April 25th, the first mental health professional testified, and based on her assessment, she never witnessed any symptoms of dissociative disorder or bipolar disorder in Letecia. On April 28th, Dr. Loandra Torres, who was one of the forensic psychologists who assessed Letecia's sanity, testified that she believed Letecia might be lying about having dissociative identity disorder. She said, quote, "All of it seems a bit far-fetched." On May 1st, Kevin Clark, who was a former crime analyst for Colorado Springs Police and is currently the director of crime strategies and intelligence for 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office, spent the entire day on the witness stand reviewing the prosecution's timeline of events. Near the end of his testimony, he reviewed Google searches that Letecia made on her phone prior to her arrest, including, quote, "hiding IP address," quote, "need a fake ID, legit." Several searches regarding, quote, "face transplants" or, quote, "plastic surgery," quote, "what do they do when they find a body in another state?" Quote, "how do they identify bodies found in another state?" Quote, "Spanish girl names." Quote, "how long before a body starts to decompose in a bag?" And "how do people avoid the FBI?" On May 2nd, the prosecution rests and the defense calls its first witness. The defense's second witness, clinical psychiatrist Dr. Dorothy Lewis, testified that she found Letecia to be insane at the time that she allegedly killed Gannon. And in her opinion, Letecia has dissociative identity disorder, or at least had it at the time of the murder. Now, I actually find Dr. Dorothy Lewis to be fascinating. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but there's a documentary that covers her work on HBO. Her work is known for really diving into the nuances in criminals' mental health and potential reasons for why they might have done what they did, and really taking a close look at some of the most vilified figures in true crime. I think Ted Bundy was one of the people that she examined. So she's kind of known from her work, from what I understand, to be really good for a defense who's trying to build a case of insanity. I also have to mention, I believe she's in her 80s at this point, and there was all this confusion. She arrived late and her phone went off, and it's hard to tell if she was given false information by the defense team. I'm not sure why they would do that in terms of when to report, or if she's just elderly and having difficulty keeping track of that stuff. But I just wanted to put that context in there. She is a brilliant mind, but I don't know if she's as sharp as she used to be. And, that's kind of an inevitability with age. So on May 3rd, Dr. Lewis stands by her findings in Letecia's sanity examination during a really tense day of cross-examination by the prosecution. On May 5th, the defense rested its case, and on the afternoon of May 8th, the jury reached a verdict. The jury found Letecia guilty on all counts: murder in the first degree of a child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with physical evidence. After the verdict was read, the judge ordered a 30-minute break, and then Gannon's mother, Landon Bullard, and his father, Al Stauch, made really emotional impact statements. Then the sentencing began. For the murder in the first degree, Letecia was sentenced to life without parole. For murder in the first degree of a child under 12 by a person in a position of trust, Letecia was sentenced to life without parole. For tampering with a deceased human body, she was sentenced to 12 years, 3-year parole, consecutive to life. For tampering with physical evidence, she was sentenced to 18 months, consecutive to life. I always forget this, so I'm just pointing it out if you're like me and you forget it too. Consecutive means that it cannot run concurrently, so she can't serve those life sentences as at the same time as each other. She has to serve one, and then it ends, and then serve another, and then it ends, which is very unlikely. And I don't know if y'all saw this, but I thought the judge was so measured but unrelenting in addressing Letecia, and it was such a beautiful moment. And he was clearly moved by the impact statements of Gannon's parents. So I want to ask y'all, what did you think about this trial? Have you been following the case since the beginning? What did you think about Letecia's defense? Did you see Dr. Dorothy Lewis's testimony? If so, what did you think about it? And were you familiar with her work? I think at some point I would really like to cover that documentary on HBO. I found it really interesting, and I think y'all would too.
What did you think about this insanity plea? I feel like people, I guess they're grasping at straws, right? It's their only hope. It was very clear that she did it. Circumstantial evidence and physical evidence tying her to the scene, or, to the remains. I feel like a lot of defense teams try to take a client who has a personality disorder, for instance, let's just say antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, either one of those. Oh, this is Leah, by the way. She's a farm cat. I'll put a picture of her in there. She's about 12 years old, and she's been an indoor/outdoor cat her entire life. And she's wonderful. She's a long-haired tuxedo cat, and she's so affectionate. And before my daughter was born, she used to jump into the crib that we had set up in my daughter's room, and my husband would actually tuck her in at night. So just to get an idea of what this cat's life is like. Thinking about Brian Koberger, for instance, and I'm sure his defense team is trying to cook up something, whether it's, oh, you misidentified his physical features, the eyewitness, or so that they couldn't possibly have been him, or this visual snow thing and making that into some sort of mental disability or something. But when it comes down to insanity, it's not a question of, are you mentally ill? It's a question of, do you have the capacity at the time that you committed the crime to know the difference between right and wrong, in my understanding. And if you are concealing things, lying about things, searching about ways to conceal things or get out of things, then to me that clearly demonstrates that you did something wrong and you're trying to cover your tracks now. A long-winded way of saying you can still be mentally ill and know what the fuck you did. So y'all let me know what you think. Thank you again so much for watching. Please like if you liked it, and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And don't forget to comment below and tell me, what do you want to hear about from me? I'm reading the Ramses book right now, and I'm gonna do a video on that. I'm eventually gonna pick the OJ series back up, but I don't think that got as much interest. And so I'm feeling like I should shift my focus more to current cases, especially because there's so many explosive ones out there. But you let me know what you think. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.